The auditorium lights burned bright against the polished floor of the Atlanta Police Department's ceremonial hall. Rows of uniforms sat rigid, badges gleaming under the overhead fluorescence. At the front, a long table draped in blue cloth held plaques, certificates, and a single bronze medal resting in a velvet-lined box. The air smelled of fresh coffee and floor polish, the kind of sterile ceremony scent that always made Sarah Collins feel slightly out of place. She stood off to the side of the stage, hands clasped behind her back, uniform pressed to perfection. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a tight bun, not a strand out of place. At 36, she carried a decade of service in the set of her shoulders. Confident but not arrogant, steady, reliable. The kind of officer people remembered.
Easy, Max,
Beside her, sitting perfectly still, was Max. The 10-year-old Belgian Malinois had his ears up, amber eyes scanning the room with the calm precision of a seasoned professional. His black harness bore the Atlanta PD emblem, polished and proud. His chest rose and fell in slow, measured breaths. To anyone watching, he looked like a statue carved from discipline and loyalty. Captain Morris stood at the podium, reading from a prepared speech. His voice echoed through the speakers, formal and rehearsed. Lieutenant Sarah Collins has served this department with distinction for 10 years. Her record speaks for itself: 43 high-risk apprehensions, 12 commendations, and a partnership with K9 Officer Max that has become the gold standard for our unit. Applause rippled through the audience. Sarah didn't smile. She nodded once, professionally. Max didn't move. Morris continued. Today, we honor not just her service, but her courage in choosing a new path. Lieutenant Collins has made the difficult decision to step away from active duty to pursue a personal opportunity that we all support and respect. More applause. A few officers in the front row exchanged glances. Everyone knew Sarah wasn't the type to walk away from the job, but no one questioned it publicly. That wasn't how things worked. Sarah's jaw tightened slightly. The truth was more complicated than Morris made it sound. It always was. To present Lieutenant Collins with the Honorary Service Medal, Morris announced, gesturing toward the side entrance. Please welcome Colonel Richard Bauer, United States Army, liaison to the Atlanta Regional Defense Initiative. The door opened. Colonel Bauer stepped into the room. He was tall, mid-50s, with silver hair trimmed military sharp. His dress uniform was immaculate. Ribbons lined his chest in perfect rows, brass buttons catching the light. He walked with the kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. Confident, commanding, the kind of man who'd spent decades being obeyed without question. He smiled as he approached the stage, nodding to the crowd. His shoes clicked against the floor in steady rhythm. Sarah watched him cross the room. Something felt off, but she couldn't place it. Maybe it was just nerves. Last day jitters. She'd been on edge all morning. Bauer reached the steps. He climbed them smoothly, his smile widening as he approached the podium. Morris shook his hand, then gestured towards Sarah. "Lieutenant Collins," Bauer said warmly, extending his hand. Sarah stepped forward. She reached out to shake his hand, and that's when Max moved. The dog's body shifted, his ears pinned back, his lips curled, exposing teeth. Then he barked. Not a warning bark, not a playful bark. A full-throated, aggressive attack-mode bark that tore through the silence like a gunshot. The sound echoed off the walls. Every head in the room snapped toward the stage. Max lunged forward, straining against his lead, barking again, sharp, furious, unrelenting. His eyes locked on Bauer, his body coiled, muscles tense, ready to strike. The room erupted, chairs scraped, officers stood. Murmurs turned to shouts. Cameras flashed from the back row where the press sat. Sarah's hand tightened on Max's lead, holding him back. Her heart hammered. "Max! Heel!" Max didn't heel. He barked again, louder, more aggressive. His focus never left Bauer. Bauer stepped back, hands raised in a gesture of calm confusion. "Whoa, easy there. Max, down!" Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Max dropped into a crouch, but his eyes stayed locked on the colonel. His lips were still pulled back, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Morris stepped between them, his face flushed. "Lieutenant, control your dog." "I'm trying, sir," Sarah said tightly. Her mind raced. Max had never done this, not once in 10 years, not at ceremonies, not in crowds, not with strangers. Max didn't bark without reason. Security officers moved toward the stage. 2 uniformed guards flanked Bauer, who waved them off with a practiced smile. It's fine, just a little spooked, I'm sure." But Sarah saw it, the flicker in Bauer's eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his smile didn't quite reach his face. He wasn't surprised. He was calculating. "Lieutenant," Morris said sharply, his voice low, "remove your dog, now." Sarah hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay, to watch, to figure out why Max had reacted. But she was surrounded by superiors, by protocol, by the weight of a decade of following orders. She gave Max's lead a firm tug. "Come." Max resisted for a heartbeat, then obeyed. He moved with her, his body still tense, his eyes never leaving Bauer as they descended the stage steps. The crowd parted, whispers followed them. Sarah kept her head high, her expression neutral, but inside her mind was spinning. Morris's voice resumed behind her, smooth and apologetic. "Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse the interruption. As we all know, K9 officers are highly trained, but even the best can have an off moment." Sarah didn't listen. She guided Max through the side door and into the hallway beyond. The door closed behind them, muffling the ceremony. The hallway was empty, fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead. Sarah exhaled slowly, then knelt beside Max. His body was still rigid. His ears were still back. His breathing was controlled, but his eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes, were focused on the door they'd just come through. "What did you see, boy?" Sarah whispered, running her hand along his neck. Max's gaze didn't waver. Sarah stood, her hand resting on his head. She'd known Max since he was 2 years old. She'd trained with him, worked with him, trusted him with her life. He'd never given a false alert, not once. If Max reacted, there was a reason. She glanced back at the door. Through the small window, she could see Bauer standing at the podium, accepting applause, shaking hands. He looked calm, composed, like nothing had happened. But Sarah knew better. She pulled out her phone and opened a notes app. She typed quickly, "Colonel Richard Bauer, U.S. Army, Liaison, Atlanta Regional Defense Initiative." Then she added, "Max alerted. Aggressive response. No prior contact." She pocketed her phone and looked down at Max. "Looks like we're not done yet." Max's tail gave a single, firm wag. Sarah smiled grimly. "One more case, partner. Just one more." The ceremony concluded 20 minutes later. Sarah stayed in the hallway, watching through the window as officers filed out, shaking hands, laughing, posing for photos. Bauer was at the center of it all, charming and composed. Captain Morris found her by the vending machines. His expression was tight. "Collins." "Sir." "That was unacceptable." "Yes, sir." "Max is a decorated K9. He doesn't just lose control like that." Sarah met his eyes. "No, sir, he doesn't." Morris's jaw worked. He glanced down the hallway, then back at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Max alerted, sir, and Max doesn't alert without cause." Morris exhaled slowly. "Sarah, you're done, officially, as of today. You don't have clearance to investigate anything." "I know, so let it go." Sarah didn't respond. Morris studied her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You're stubborn as hell, you know that." "Yes, sir." He sighed. "If you're going to do something stupid, at least be smart about it." Sarah blinked. Sir? Morris leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. I've known you 10 years. Collins, you're not the type to walk away from something that doesn't sit right. Just don't make me regret not stopping you. He straightened, his expression neutral again. Enjoy your retirement, Lieutenant. Then he turned and walked away. Sarah watched him go. Then she looked down at Max. Let's go to work, she said quietly. Max stood, alert and ready. They walked out the side exit together, leaving the ceremony behind. Sarah's apartment was small but functional. 1 bedroom, a kitchen with a window overlooking the street, and a living room that doubled as her workspace. Max's bed sat in the corner, worn but clean. A corkboard hung on the wall above her desk, empty except for a few old case notes she'd never taken down. She pulled out her laptop and sat at the desk. Max settled beside her, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes open. Sarah opened a browser and typed, Colonel Richard Bauer. The results loaded quickly. Military record, public service, community outreach. Photos of him at events, shaking hands with mayors, police chiefs, business leaders. She scrolled deeper. Atlanta Regional Defense Initiative, a joint program between local law enforcement and military resources, designed to improve coordination during emergencies. It all looked clean, official, legitimate. But Max didn't care about clean records. Sarah leaned back thinking. She needed more, something concrete, something that explained why a decorated military officer would trigger a K-9 alert. She opened another tab and accessed the Atlanta PD database. She was technically still in the system. Her clearance wouldn't be revoked until midnight. She typed Bauer's name into the search bar. No results. She frowned. That was unusual. A liaison officer working with local law enforcement should have at least some mention in departmental files. She tried a different search. Regional Defense Initiative. 2 results appeared, both administrative memos, both vague, no details, no names, no substance. Sarah's instincts prickled. She pulled up the property records database and searched for any addresses associated with Bauer. Nothing. She tried military facility registrations in the Atlanta area. 1 result, decommissioned supply depot, location, outskirts, near Douglasville. Status, inactive since 2019. Sarah clicked the link. The page loaded slowly, showing a grainy satellite image of a large warehouse surrounded by chain-link fence. No activity, no vehicles, no lights. She zoomed in. The image was dated 6 months ago. She bookmarked the page, then pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts and stopped on a name, Danny Ortiz. Danny was a forensic tech she'd worked with on 6 cases, smart, discreet and loyal. She typed, need a favor, off the books. Can you run a chemical analysis on fabric samples? The reply came 2 minutes later. Depends. How off the books? Sarah typed, very. 3 dots appeared. Then, where and when? Sarah smiled. Tomorrow morning. My place. Done. She set her phone down and looked at Max. We're going to need evidence, boy. Real evidence. Max's ears perked up. Sarah pulled the corkboard off the wall and set it on her desk. She pinned Bauer's photo in the center. Below it, she added notes. Military liaison. No database records. Chemical alert. Unknown facility. Douglasville. She stepped back, studying the board. This was her last case, and she was going to solve it, even if it cost her everything. Danny Ortiz arrived at 7 in the morning, carrying a black duffel bag and 2 coffees. He was lean, mid-30s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow that made him look like he hadn't slept in days, which, knowing Danny, was probably true. Sarah opened the door before he could knock. Max stood beside her, tail wagging once in recognition. Morning, Danny said, handing her a coffee. You look like hell. Thanks, Sarah said dryly, stepping aside to let him in. Danny set the duffel on the kitchen table and unzipped it, revealing an array of portable testing equipment, spectrometers, swab kits, reagent bottles, and a compact analyzer that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. "So," Danny said, pulling out a pair of nitrile gloves, "what are we testing?" Sarah retrieved a small evidence bag from her desk. Inside was a scrap of fabric, dark blue, military grade. She'd managed to collect it during the chaos at the ceremony, a piece that had snagged on Max's harness when he lunged at Bauer. She handed it to Danny. "This." Danny held it up to the light, examining it. "Where'd you get it?" "Bauer's uniform. Max tore it when he reacted." Danny's eyebrows rose. "You stole evidence from a military officer?" "I retrieved trace material during an investigation," Sarah corrected. "You're not an investigator anymore." "Technically, I was still on duty when I collected it," Danny snorted. "Semantics." He set the fabric on a clean tray and pulled out a swab. "What am I looking for?" "Anything that would explain why Max alerted. Chemicals, residue, explosives, whatever you can find." Danny nodded, his expression turning serious. He ran the swab across the fabric, then inserted it into the analyzer. The machine hummed softly, its screen lighting up with lines of data. Sarah watched, her coffee growing cold in her hand. Max sat at her feet, his eyes on the analyzer like he understood what it was doing. 2 minutes passed, then the analyzer beeped. Danny leaned closer, reading the results. His jaw tightened. "Well, that's interesting." "What?" He turned the screen toward her. "Traces of RDX and PETN, both high-grade military explosives." Sarah's pulse quickened. "How much?" "Not enough to be dangerous. Just residue. Like he'd been handling something recently." Danny looked up at her. "Sarah, if this guy's been around explosives, there are legitimate reasons. He's military, could be training, could be disposal work, or it could be something else." Sarah finished. Danny pulled off his gloves. "You're thinking trafficking." "I'm thinking Max doesn't care about training exercises." Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. "What do you need from me?" "Everything you just found, documented, time-stamped, unofficial, but thorough. If this goes sideways, it won't come back to you," Sarah said firmly. "I promise." Danny held her gaze, then nodded. "I'll send you the report by noon." "Thank you." He packed up his equipment, zipped the duffel, and headed for the door. Then he paused. "Sarah?" "Yeah? Be careful. People who deal in explosives don't appreciate being investigated." Sarah nodded. "I know." Danny left. Sarah locked the door behind him and returned to her desk. She pulled up the satellite image of the decommissioned depot in Douglasville and studied it again. Max moved beside her, his chin resting on her knee. "We're going out there tonight," she said quietly. "You and me." Max's tail thumped once against the floor. The sun set over Atlanta in shades of orange and red, painting the skyline in fire. Sarah packed her go-bag with the essentials: flashlight, multi-tool, camera, zip ties, and her off-duty Glock 19. She strapped on a tactical vest under a dark jacket and clipped Max's lead to his harness. She checked her phone. Danny's report had arrived 2 hours ago, detailed and damning. Explosive residue consistent with recent handling. No environmental contamination. Direct contact. She forwarded the report to a secure cloud folder, then deleted it from her phone, just in case. At 8:30, she loaded Max into her Jeep and headed west out of the city. Traffic thinned as she left downtown, the bright lights giving way to industrial zones and empty lots. The GPS guided her along back roads, past shuttered factories and overgrown fields. 40 minutes later, she turned onto a gravel road marked by a faded sign, "Authorized personnel only." She killed the headlights and rolled forward slowly, gravel crunching under the tires. The depot appeared ahead, a sprawling concrete structure surrounded by rusted chain-link fencing. No lights, no vehicles, no signs of life. She parked 100 yards out, hidden behind a cluster of trees. "Stay close," she whispered to Max. They moved through the darkness together, Sarah's flashlight off, relying on moonlight to navigate. The air smelled of rust and decay, the kind of place that had been forgotten by everyone except those who wanted to stay hidden. The fence had a gap near the southeast corner, cut cleanly recently. Sarah squeezed through, Max slipping after her with practiced ease. They approached the main building. The doors were chained, but a side entrance had been forced open, the lock broken. Sarah drew her weapon and entered. The interior was cavernous. High ceilings, concrete floors, metal shelving units lining the walls. Dust hung in the air, illuminated by thin shafts of moonlight streaming through broken windows. But it wasn't empty. Wooden crates were stacked near the back wall, stamped with military markings. Sarah moved closer, Max at her side, and pried one open with her multi-tool. Inside, assault rifles, M4 carbines still in factory wrapping. She opened another crate. Ammunition, thousands of rounds. A third crate, plastic explosives neatly packaged. Sarah's breath caught. This wasn't surplus. This was active inventory. Military-grade weapons, stolen or diverted, stored in a supposedly decommissioned facility. She pulled out her camera and started documenting everything: serial numbers, crate labels, positioning. Max circled the area, his nose working, his body tense. Then he froze. His ears snapped forward. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Sarah turned, her weapon raised. Footsteps. Outside, multiple people. "Max, heel," she whispered. They moved behind a row of shelving, Sarah's heart pounding. The footsteps grew louder. Voices carried through the open door. "Told you, next shipment's Thursday. We move it out before dawn. Bauer says we need to be more careful. That cop and her dog. She's done. Retired. Not our problem anymore." Sarah's jaw clenched. Two men entered the building, both armed, flashlights sweeping the space. One was tall, wearing military fatigues. The other was shorter, civilian clothes, a pistol holstered at his hip. They moved toward the crates, inspecting them casually. Sarah stayed still, her breathing controlled. Max didn't move, but his body was coiled, ready. The tall one checked his watch. "We've got 20 minutes before the next patrol. Let's load the truck." They started hauling crates toward the door. Sarah weighed her options. She was outnumbered, outgunned, and officially powerless. If she engaged, it would be her word against theirs, and she had no legal standing. But she had evidence. She raised her camera and snapped photos, clear shots of the men, the weapons, the operation. One of the flashes reflected off a metal surface. The shorter man's head snapped toward her. "Hey!" Sarah bolted. "Go, Max!" They sprinted toward the side exit, footsteps thundering behind them. Shouts erupted. A gunshot cracked through the air, the bullet ricocheting off concrete. Sarah burst through the door and ran, Max streaking ahead. Another shot. She ducked, adrenaline surging. They reached the fence. Sarah dove through the gap, Max following instantly. She didn't look back. They reached the jeep. Sarah threw open the door, Max leaping into the passenger seat. She started the engine and floored it, gravel spraying as the tires spun. In the rearview mirror, she saw flashlights converging on the fence, but they didn't follow. Sarah drove hard for 5 miles, then pulled onto a side road and stopped. Her hands were shaking. She gripped the steering wheel, forcing herself to breathe. Max leaned over and licked her hand. She laughed, sharp, breathless. "We're definitely not done yet, boy." She pulled out her camera and scrolled through the photos, clear images, faces, weapons, evidence. She uploaded everything to the secure cloud folder, then texted a single contact. Federal Agent Nina Reeves, FBI. Message, need to meet. Urgent. I have something you'll want to see. The reply came 3 minutes later. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Piedmont Park. Come alone. Sarah typed back. Not alone. Bringing my partner. Fine. Sarah pocketed her phone and looked at Max. We've got 12 hours to figure out how deep this goes. Max's tail wagged. Sarah started the engine and headed back toward the city. She spent the rest of the night cross-referencing data, Bauer's service record, the depot's ownership history, shipment logs from the Regional Defense Initiative. Every thread led back to the same place, a network of diverted military assets moving through Atlanta under the cover of legitimate operations. And Bauer was at the center of it. By dawn, Sarah had built a case, not courtroom-ready, but enough to get federal attention, enough to prove Max had been right. At 9:30, she drove to Piedmont Park. The morning was cool, joggers and dog walkers filling the trails. She found a bench near the lake and sat, Max at her side. Nina Reeves arrived 10 minutes later, mid-40s, sharp suit, dark hair pulled back. She had the look of someone who'd seen too much and trusted too little. She sat beside Sarah without greeting. "You've got 5 minutes." Sarah handed her a tablet loaded with the photos and Danny's report. Decommissioned military depot in Douglasville, active weapons storage, high-grade explosives, personnel operating under the authority of the Atlanta Regional Defense Initiative. Nina scrolled through the images, her expression unreadable. Who's running it? Colonel Richard Bauer, Army liaison. Nina looked up sharply. "You're sure?" "Max alerted on him yesterday at my farewell ceremony. Explosive residue on his uniform. I tracked him to the depot last night." Nina was quiet for a long moment. Then she handed back the tablet. "This is big, Sarah. Bigger than you realize." "How big?" "Federal task force big. We've been tracking illegal arms shipments for 6 months. If Bauer's involved, this connects to something much larger." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What do you need from me?" "Everything you've got." And then you walk away. "No!" Nina's jaw tightened. "You're a civilian now. You don't have authority." "I have the evidence. I have the access. And I have Max." Sarah met her eyes. "You need me." Nina studied her. Then she sighed. "One operation. Controlled. By the book. And then you're done." Sarah nodded. "Deal." Nina stood. "I'll be in touch." She walked away, disappearing into the morning crowd. Sarah looked down at Max. "We're back in, partner." Max barked once, sharp and clear. They were just getting started. The FBI field office in downtown Atlanta was a fortress of glass and steel, designed to intimidate and impress in equal measure. Sarah had been inside once before, years ago, during a joint task force operation that ended with 3 arrests and 2 commendations. Back then, she'd had a badge and authority. Now, she was a civilian consultant with a dog and a grudge. Nina Reeves met her in the lobby at 7 in the morning. No pleasantries, just a visitor badge and a curt, "Follow me." They took an elevator to the 4th floor, then walked through a maze of cubicles to a secure conference room. Inside, 3 agents were already seated, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing the same expression of professional skepticism. Nina closed the door. "This is Sarah Collins, former Atlanta PD. She's the one who brought us the Douglasville intel." The woman, blonde and sharp-eyed, spoke first. "Agent Carter, Organized Crime Division." She gestured to the men. "Agent Brooks, Agent Diaz. We've been tracking arms trafficking networks for 8 months. Your information aligns with patterns we've been seeing." Sarah set her tablet on the table. "How deep does it go?" Brooks, a broad-shouldered man with a crew cut, leaned forward. "Deeper than we thought. We've identified at least 6 decommissioned military sites across Georgia being used as transit points. Weapons are moved from federal stockpiles, rerouted through these locations, then sold to criminal organizations, militia groups, and foreign buyers. "Bauer's the linchpin," Diaz added. "He was younger, wiry, with quick eyes. His position as liaison gives him access to inventory records, transport schedules, security protocols. He knows exactly what's moving and when." Sarah absorbed this. "Who's he working with?" Nina pulled up a digital map on the wall screen. Red dots marked locations across the state. We've identified 3 primary facilitators, all ex-military, all connected to Bauer through the Regional Defense Initiative. But we haven't been able to catch them in the act. Every time we get close, they move the operation. That's where you come in, Carter said, her gaze sharp. You've already been inside the Douglasville site. You've seen the layout. And your dog, Max, he's an asset we don't have. Sarah glanced down at Max, who sat beside her chair, calm and attentive. What's the plan? Nina tapped the screen, zooming in on Douglasville. We believe there's another shipment scheduled for tonight. Bauer and his team will be moving high-value weapons, likely rocket launchers and anti-tank ordnance, to a secondary location before transport out of state. We need eyes on the ground to confirm the transfer and identify all parties involved. You want me to go back in? Sarah said. We want you to lead the reconnaissance, Nina corrected. You're not law enforcement anymore, so you're not bound by the same restrictions. If things go wrong, we have plausible deniability. If they go right, we have the evidence we need to shut this down. Sarah's jaw tightened. So I'm expendable. You're deniable, Carter said flatly. There's a difference. Sarah looked at Nina. What happens if I say no? Then we wait for another opportunity, which could take months. And in the meantime, those weapons end up in the hands of people who will use them. Nina's expression softened slightly. You've already put yourself at risk, Sarah. Finish what you started. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. What do you need? By noon, Sarah was back at her apartment, reviewing the operational plan Nina had sent. The approach was straightforward. Infiltrate the depot under cover of darkness, document the transfer, and extract before engagement became necessary. FBI surveillance teams would be positioned at a distance, ready to move in once confirmation was received. Simple, dangerous, probably illegal. Sarah packed her gear, tactical vest, night vision scope, camera with telephoto lens, portable audio recorder. She checked her Glock, loaded a fresh magazine, and holstered it at her hip. Max watched from his bed, his head tilted slightly. One more time, boy, Sarah said, kneeling beside him, just like old times. Max's tail wagged. She scratched behind his ears, then stood. Let's go to work. Night fell over Douglasville like a black curtain. Sarah parked her jeep in the same spot as before, hidden among the trees, and killed the engine. The depot loomed ahead, dark and silent. No lights, no movement. But Sarah knew better than to trust appearances. She clipped Max's tactical lead and checked her equipment one last time, earpiece in, camera ready, weapon secured. They moved through the darkness together, Sarah's night vision scope painting the world in shades of green. The fence gap was still there, untouched. They slipped through and advanced toward the building. The side entrance was open again. Sarah paused, listening, voices inside, low, controlled. She signaled Max to stay close and entered. The interior was the same, concrete, shadows, crates. But now there were more people, 5 men, all armed, moving with military precision. They were loading crates onto a flatbed truck parked just inside the loading bay. Sarah crouched behind a stack of pallets and raised her camera. She zoomed in, capturing faces, weapons, vehicle plates. One of the men was Bauer. He stood near the truck, clipboard in hand, directing the operation. His uniform was gone, replaced by dark fatigues. He looked different, harder, colder. This wasn't a liaison officer. This was a smuggler. Sarah snapped photos. Max stayed at her side, silent and alert. Bauer checked his watch. We're behind schedule. Load the last 3 crates and move out. I want this convoy on I-20 before midnight. One of the men nodded. What about the cops? That Collins woman? She's not a problem, Bauer said sharply. She's retired. No authority, no backup. Even if she's poking around, she can't touch us. Sarah's jaw clenched. The men hauled the final crates onto the truck. Heavy, marked with military stencils. Sarah zoomed in on the labels: M72 Law, AT4, javelin components, anti-tank weapons, enough firepower to level a city block. She keyed her earpiece. "Nina, I have confirmation, 5 targets including Bauer, weapons loaded, vehicle ready to move. Plates are Georgia commercial. Number..." A low growl cut through her words. "Max." Sarah froze. One of the men had stopped, his head tilted. "You hear that?" Another man raised his rifle, scanning the shadows. "Something's here." Sarah's pulse hammered. She pressed herself lower, signaling Max to stay quiet, but Max's body was tense. His ears were pinned back. Someone was behind them. Sarah turned slowly. A 6th man stood 10 feet away, rifle aimed directly at her. He was massive, scarred, his face half hidden in shadow. "Don't move," he said quietly. Sarah's hand inched toward her weapon. "Don't," the man repeated. His finger tightened on the trigger. Max snarled. "Max, no!" The dog lunged. The man fired. The shot went wide, Max's jaws clamping onto his arm. He screamed. The rifle clattered to the floor. Sarah drew her Glock and fired twice. Center mass. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. Shouts, running footsteps. Bauer's voice barking orders. Sarah grabbed Max's lead. "Go! Go!" They sprinted toward the loading bay exit. Bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off concrete. Sarah returned fire, dropping another man. They burst outside. The truck's engine roared to life. Headlights flared. Sarah dove behind a stack of pallets, Max at her side. The truck lurched forward, accelerating toward the fence. She raised her weapon, aimed at the tires. A hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun, weapon raised. "FBI, don't shoot!" Agent Diaz. Behind him, Carter and Brooks, vests marked, weapons drawn. "Truck!" Sarah shouted, pointing. Brooks radioed. "All units, intercept the vehicle. Do not let it leave the perimeter." The truck smashed through the fence, metal screaming. FBI vehicles appeared from the tree line, sirens wailing, lights flashing. But the truck didn't stop. It barreled onto the road, picking up speed. Sarah ran to her jeep. "Max, in!" Diaz grabbed her arm. "Collins, stand down. They're getting away." She yanked free, started the engine, and floored it. The chase tore through the back roads of Douglasville, Sarah's jeep struggling to keep pace with the flatbed. Ahead, FBI vehicles closed in from both sides, forming a blockade. The truck swerved, clipping one of the cruisers. Metal shrieked. The cruiser spun out. Sarah gritted her teeth and pushed the jeep harder. Max barked, sharp and urgent. The truck's brake lights flared. It skidded, fishtailing, then crashed through a guardrail and plunged into a ravine. Sarah slammed the brakes. The jeep screeched to a halt. She leapt out, weapon drawn, and ran to the edge. The truck had rolled, coming to rest on its side. Flames licked at the engine. The cab door opened. Bauer crawled out, bloodied, limping. He raised a pistol. Sarah aimed. "Don't!" Bauer fired. The shot went wide. Sarah returned fire, once, twice, and Bauer dropped, clutching his leg. FBI agents swarmed the scene. Carter reached Bauer first, cuffing him as he groaned. Nina appeared beside Sarah, breathing hard. "You okay?" Sarah lowered her weapon, her hands shaking. "Yeah." Nina looked down at the wreckage, then back at Sarah. Hell of a way to close a case. Sarah managed a faint smile. "Just like old times." Max nudged her hand. She knelt beside him, running her fingers through his fur. "Good boy. Good boy." 2 hours later, Sarah sat in the back of an FBI van, wrapped in a blanket, watching as agents processed the scene. Bauer was loaded into an ambulance, still conscious, still cursing. Nina climbed into the van and handed Sarah a bottle of water. "You should have stayed back." "You're welcome," Sarah said dryly. Nina smiled. "We got him, all of them, and the weapons. That's a major win. What happens now?" "Federal charges, conspiracy, trafficking, attempted murder. Bauer's going away for a long time." Nina paused. "And you're a hero. Again." Sarah shook her head. "I'm retired." "You sure about that?" Sarah looked at Max, who sat beside her, calm and steady. "Yeah, I'm sure." Nina nodded. "Then enjoy it. You earned it." She left. Sarah sat alone, staring out at the flashing lights. One more case, one more fight, and it was over. She looked at Max. "Ready to go home, partner?" Max's tail wagged. They climbed into the Jeep and drove into the night, leaving the chaos behind. The Atlanta Morning News hit at 6 a.m. Sarah was awake, coffee in hand, when the headlines scrolled across her laptop screen. Major arms trafficking ring dismantled. FBI arrests military officer and associates. Her phone buzzed. Text from Nina. "You're not mentioned. We kept you out of it." "Media thinks it was pure FBI work." Sarah typed back, "Good." She closed the laptop and looked at Max, who was eating breakfast from his bowl in the kitchen. The apartment felt quiet, too quiet. The adrenaline from last night had worn off, leaving only exhaustion and the dull ache of bruises she hadn't noticed until now. She should have felt relieved. The case was closed. Bauer was in custody. The weapons were secured. But something gnawed at her. Max finished eating and padded over, sitting at her feet. His amber eyes studied her with that uncanny intelligence that always made her feel like he could read her thoughts. "We did good, boy," she said softly. "We did what we set out to do." Max tilted his head. Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time it was Captain Morris, my office. 10 a.m. Non-negotiable. She stared at the message. Morris had been supportive, quietly. But this felt different, formal, official. She typed, "I'm retired, sir." The reply came instantly, "Not anymore." 10 a.m. Sarah set the phone down and exhaled slowly. "Looks like we're not done yet, Max." The Atlanta PD building felt different when Sarah walked through the doors at 9:50. Officers nodded at her as she passed, some offering quiet congratulations, others just watching. Word had spread. Despite the FBI's efforts to keep her involvement quiet, she took the elevator to the 3rd floor and walked to Morris's office. The door was open. He was inside, standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Close the door," he said without turning. Sarah did. Max sat beside her, calm and attentive. Morris turned to face her. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between impressed and furious. "You want to explain to me what the hell you were doing at a federal crime scene last night?" "Following a lead," Sarah said evenly. "You're retired." "I was consulting." "Consulting?" Morris's jaw tightened. "You infiltrated a weapons depot, engaged armed suspects, and participated in a high-speed pursuit that ended with a vehicle crash and multiple arrests. That's not consulting, Collins. That's active duty." Sarah met his eyes. "Max alerted on Bauer. I followed the evidence. The FBI confirmed it. We stopped a major trafficking operation. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" Morris was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed and sat behind his desk. "Sit." Sarah sat. Max remained at her side. Morris pulled a folder from his desk and slid it across to her. "This came through Internal Affairs this morning. Anonymous tip. Claims there are officers in this department who were aware of Bauer's operation and turned a blind eye." Sarah's stomach tightened. "How many?" "Unknown. But the tip specifically mentions 3 names. He opened the folder. "Lieutenant Marcus Hall, Sergeant Kevin Odom, Detective Rachel Prine." Sarah recognized all 3. Hall was a senior officer in logistics. Odom worked in evidence management. Prine was assigned to interagency coordination. All positions with access to sensitive information. "They're saying these officers were compromised," Sarah asked. "Not just compromised, complicit." Morris leaned back. "If this is true, it means Bauer had inside help, people feeding him intel, covering his tracks, making sure he stayed ahead of investigations." Sarah's mind raced. "Have they been questioned?" "Not yet. IA wants to move carefully. If we tip them off, They'll disappear or destroy evidence. Morris looked at her. That's where you come in. Sarah blinked. Sir, you're retired, officially. You have no authority, no jurisdiction, which means you can ask questions without triggering alarms. He paused. And you have a reputation. People trust you. If anyone's going to get these officers to slip up, it's you. You want me to investigate my own department. I want you to find the truth. Morris's voice was firm. Bauer's arrest doesn't mean this is over. If there are dirty cops feeding information to traffickers, we need to root them out before they regroup. Sarah looked down at Max. He was watching her, waiting. She looked back at Morris. What's my cover? Morris allowed a faint smile. You're conducting exit interviews, gathering feedback from senior officers about departmental operations before you officially transition out. Standard protocol. And if I find something, you report directly to me, no one else. Morris's expression hardened. This stays between us, Sarah. I don't know who else might be involved. Sarah nodded slowly. When do I start? Now. Lieutenant Marcus Hall's office was on the second floor, tucked in a corner near the supply depot. Sarah knocked twice, then entered. Hall looked up from his computer. He was in his late 40s, stocky, with thinning hair and a permanent scowl. Collins, heard you retired. Just wrapping up some final paperwork, Sarah said, keeping her tone casual. She gestured to Max. Mind if he stays? Hall shrugged. Fine. Sarah sat across from him, pulling out a notebook. Captain Morris asked me to do some exit interviews. Get feedback on departmental operations. You've been here, what, 20 years? 22, Hall said, leaning back. Why does Morris care what I think? Because you're logistics. You know how this place actually runs. Sarah smiled. I figured you'd have insights worth hearing. Hall seemed to relax slightly. What do you want to know? Supply chain management, inventory tracking. How do we make sure nothing goes missing? Hall snorted. We don't, not perfectly. There's always leakage. Equipment gets damaged, misreported, written off. It's bureaucracy. You can't track every bullet. But you track the big stuff. Weapons, tactical gear. Sure, those have serial numbers, chain of custody logs. Hall paused. Why are you asking about this? Just curious. I worked a lot of cases involving diverted equipment. Wanted to understand the process better. Hall's eyes narrowed slightly. You're retired. Why does it matter? Max shifted, his ears tilting forward. Sarah noticed. Just tying up loose ends. You know how it is. Hall didn't respond immediately. Then he leaned forward. Look, Collins, you did good work here, but you need to let things go. Not everything's a case. I know, Sarah said, but humor me. Have you ever noticed discrepancies in inventory? Stuff that didn't add up? Hall's jaw tightened. Sometimes, but it always gets resolved. By who? By whoever's responsible for the paperwork. Hall stood. I've got a meeting. We done here? Sarah stood as well. Yeah, thanks for your time. She left, Max at her side. Once they were in the hallway, Sarah exhaled. Max looked up at her, then glanced back at Hall's office. You felt it too, Sarah murmured. Max's tail didn't wag. Sergeant Kevin Odom was easier to find. He was in the evidence locker, logging items from a recent bust. He was younger than Hall, early 30s, with a friendly face and an easy smile. Hey, Collins, he said when she approached. Congrats on the retirement. Thanks, Sarah said. Got a minute? Sure, what's up? Sarah leaned against the counter. I'm doing some exit interviews, feedback on operations. You manage evidence, right? Yeah. Intake, storage, chain of custody, the usual. Ever have issues with items going missing? Odom laughed. All the time. Cops are terrible at logging things properly. I spend half my day tracking down mislabeled bags. What about deliberate theft? Ever see that? Odom's smile faded slightly. Not really. I mean, there are procedures, cameras, audits. Hard to steal something without getting caught. But not impossible. Odom hesitated. I guess not. Why? Just curious. I worked a case once where evidence disappeared. Never figured out how. Odom nodded slowly. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Bureaucracy. Max moved closer to Odom, sniffing the air. Odom stepped back slightly. Your dog, okay? He's fine, Sarah said. Just does his thing. Max sat, his eyes locked on Odom. Sarah watched Odom's body language. He was tense, uncomfortable. Well, Sarah said, straightening, thanks for your time. Sure, any time. Sarah left. Once she was outside, she pulled out her phone and texted Morris. Odom's nervous. Might be something there. Morris replied, keep digging. Detective Rachel Prine was the last name on the list. Sarah found her in the break room, pouring coffee. Prine was sharp, mid-30s, with short dark hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She'd worked interagency coordination for 5 years, liaising with federal task forces and military contacts, including Bauer. Collins, Prine said, offering a faint smile, heard you made some noise last night. News travels fast, Sarah said, always does. Prine sipped her coffee. What brings you here? Exit interviews. Morris wants feedback on operations. Prine raised an eyebrow. And you're asking me? You work with federal agencies. I figured you'd have perspective. Prine leaned against the counter. What do you want to know? How closely do we coordinate with military liaisons, people like Colonel Bauer? Prine's expression didn't change. Bauer was professional, did his job. Why? Just curious. I worked with him briefly. Seemed competent. He was. Prine paused. Until he wasn't. Sarah tilted her head. What does that mean? It means people change, priorities shift. You can't always trust a uniform. Prine's gaze was steady. But you already know that. Max stood, his body tense. Sarah noticed. You okay, Max? Prine glanced at the dog. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like a lot of people. Prine smiled thinly. Fair enough. She set down her coffee. I've got work. Good luck with your interviews. She left. Sarah stood alone in the break room, her instincts screaming. Max growled softly. Yeah, Sarah whispered. I know. That evening, Sarah sat at her desk reviewing her notes. Hall, Odom, Prine. All three had reacted, subtly but noticeably. All three had connections to logistics, evidence, and interagency coordination. All three had access. She pulled up personnel files, cross-referencing their work histories with Bauer's operation timeline. Patterns emerged. Shipments logged during Hall's shifts. Evidence transfers signed off by Odom. Federal coordination meetings attended by Prine. It all fit. She texted Morris, I have something, need to meet. The reply came instantly. My house, 9 p.m. Come alone. Sarah frowned. Morris's house. She texted, why not the office? Morris, because I don't know who's watching. Sarah's pulse quickened. She looked at Max. Looks like this goes deeper than we thought. Max's ears were back. Sarah grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. Captain Morris lived in a modest house on the outskirts of Atlanta, a quiet neighborhood where streetlights cast long shadows across manicured lawns. Sarah parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, Max at her side. The night was cool, the air heavy with the scent of pine and distant rain. She knocked twice. Morris opened the door immediately, his expression grim. Get inside. Sarah entered. The living room was dark except for a single lamp. Morris locked the door behind them and drew the curtains. What's going on? Sarah asked. Morris gestured to the dining table, where files were spread out like pieces of a puzzle. I've been digging deeper into Hall, Odom, and Prine. You were right. They're all connected, but it's worse than we thought. Sarah moved to the table. Photographs, bank records, encrypted communications logs. These three aren't just turning a blind eye, Morris continued. They've been actively facilitating Bauer's operation for over a year. Hall manipulated inventory reports to cover missing weapons. Odom altered evidence logs to prevent audits. And Prine... He tapped a photo of her shaking hands with a man Sarah didn't recognize. She was the go-between, coordinating shipments, arranging drop points, keeping federal agencies off the scent. Sarah's jaw tightened. How deep does this go? Morris pulled out another file. Deeper than the department. I found communication between Prine and a shell company registered in Delaware. That company has ties to international arms dealers. This isn't just local corruption, Sarah. This is organized crime on a federal level. Does the FBI know? I contacted Nina Reeves 2 hours ago. She's mobilizing a task force. Morris looked at her. But there's a problem. Prine knows we're looking. She's been monitoring internal communications. If we move too fast, she'll warn the others, and they'll disappear. So what's the plan? Morris leaned against the table. There's another shipment tonight. Final one before they shut down operations. Prine coordinated it, weapons moving from a secondary depot to a cargo ship docked at the port of Savannah. If we can intercept it, we get everyone involved. But we need someone on the inside. Someone they won't suspect. Sarah met his eyes. You want me to go in? You're retired. You're not a threat. And Prine doesn't know you've been investigating her. Morris paused. But it's dangerous, Sarah, if they realize what you're doing. I know the risks, Sarah said quietly. She looked down at Max. We both do. Morris nodded. FBI will be in position by 11. You'll have backup, but until then, you're alone. Sarah pulled out her phone and checked the time. 9:30. Where's the depot? Chattahoochee Industrial Park, Warehouse District, near the river. Morris handed her a key card. This will get you inside. Prine's meeting her contacts there at midnight. You need to be in position before they arrive. Sarah pocketed the key card. What about Hall and Odom? They'll be there too. This is the final deal. Everyone shows up. Sarah stood. Then let's end this. Morris walked her to the door. Sarah, be careful. These people have already killed to protect their operation. They won't hesitate to do it again. I know, Sarah said, but Max and I have been through worse. Max's tail wagged once. Morris managed a faint smile. Good luck. The Chattahoochee Industrial Park was a sprawling maze of warehouses and shipping containers, lit by flickering sodium lights and the distant glow of the city. Sarah parked near the river, hidden behind a stack of rusted containers, and approached on foot. The depot was at the far end of the complex, a massive concrete building with loading bays and a chain-link fence. Sarah used Morris's keycard to enter through a side gate and moved silently through the shadows. Max stayed close, his body low, his senses alert. They reached the main building. Sarah found a service entrance and slipped inside. The interior was cold and cavernous, filled with rows of crates and machinery. Overhead, lights hummed softly. At the far end, near the loading bay, 3 figures stood talking. Sarah crouched behind a stack of pallets and raised her camera, zooming in. Hall, Odom, Prine. All 3 were armed. All 3 looked tense. Prine checked her watch. They're late. They'll be here, Hall said. They always are. Odom paced nervously. I don't like this. Bauer's arrest has everyone spooked. We should shut down now, take what we have and disappear. And leave millions on the table? Prine's voice was cold. This is the last shipment. After tonight, we're done. We get paid, we vanish, and no one can connect us. Unless someone's already connected us, Odom muttered. Prine turned sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Morris has been asking questions. And Collins is retired, Prine snapped. She's not a threat, Max growled softly. Sarah placed a hand on his head, silencing him. Headlights swept through the loading bay entrance. A black SUV rolled in, followed by a panel truck. 4 men climbed out, all armed, all professional. One of them approached Prine. He was tall, scarred, with cold eyes. "You have the merchandise?" Prine gestured to the crates. 50 M4s, 20 javelins, ammunition and explosives. "Everything you ordered." The man inspected one of the crates, then nodded. "Payments in the truck. Half now, half on delivery." "No," Prine said. "Full payment now. We're done after this." The man's expression hardened. "That wasn't the deal." "The deal changed when Bauer got arrested," Prine said flatly. "Full payment, or you can find another supplier." Tension crackled through the air. The man stared at her, then nodded slowly. "Fine." He gestured to one of his associates, who retrieved a duffel bag from the SUV and tossed it at Prine's feet. Prine opened it, checking the contents. Cash, stacks of it. She zipped the bag and nodded to Hall and Odom. "Load the truck." They started hauling crates. Sarah keyed her earpiece. "Nina, I have visual confirmation. Prine, Hall, Odom and 4 buyers. Weapons transfer in progress." Nina's voice crackled back. "Roger. Teams are moving in. ETA 3 minutes. Stay hidden." Sarah lowered the camera and froze. Max's body had gone rigid. His ears were pinned back. Someone was behind them. Sarah turned slowly. A flashlight beam hit her face. "Well, well," Prine's voice said from the darkness. "Looks like Collins isn't as retired as we thought." Sarah raised her hands slowly, squinting against the light. Prine stepped into view, pistol aimed at Sarah's chest. "How long have you been here?" Prine asked. "Long enough," Sarah said. Prine smiled coldly. "You always were persistent. That's what made you a good cop. It's also what's going to get you killed." Max snarled, his body coiled to attack. "Call off your dog," Prine said, "or I shoot you both." Sarah's mind raced. The FBI was 3 minutes out. She just needed to stall. "You won't shoot," Sarah said. "Gunfire will alert everyone. Your buyers will run, and you'll lose your payday." Prine's jaw tightened. "Then I'll make it quiet." She adjusted her grip on the pistol, finger tightening on the trigger. Max lunged. Prine fired. The shot went wide. Max's jaws clamped onto her arm, yanking her down. Sarah surged forward, grabbing Prine's wrist and twisting. The pistol clattered to the floor. Prine drove an elbow into Sarah's ribs. Pain exploded. Sarah stumbled back. Prine kicked Max off and scrambled for the gun. Sarah tackled her. They hit the ground hard, wrestling for control. Prine was strong, trained, vicious. She drove a knee into Sarah's stomach, then grabbed her throat. Sarah couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred. Then Max was there, snarling, biting Prine's shoulder. Prine screamed. Sarah broke free, gasping, and delivered a brutal punch to Prine's jaw. Prine went limp. Sarah grabbed the pistol and aimed it at Prine, breathing hard. "Don't move," Prine spat blood. "You're too late. They're already loading the truck." "FBI's on the way." Prine laughed weakly. "You think the FBI scares people like us? We'll be gone before they arrive." "Not this time," Sarah said. Sirens wailed in the distance. Shouts erupted from the loading bay. The buyers had heard the shot. "FBI, drop your weapons!" Gunfire exploded. Chaos erupted. Sarah zip-tied Prine's wrists, then moved toward the loading bay, Max at her side. FBI agents swarmed the building. Tactical vests, rifles, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Nina was at the front, directing teams. Hall and Odom were on the ground, hands behind their heads, agents securing them. The buyers scattered, but more FBI units blocked the exits. It was over. Nina spotted Sarah and jogged over. "You okay?" "Yeah," Sarah said, wiping blood from her lip. "Prine's back there, secured." Nina signaled 2 agents, who moved to retrieve Prine. Sarah looked around. The crates, the weapons, the money, all evidence, all accounted for. Nina placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You did it, all of them. We've got the whole network." Sarah nodded slowly, exhaustion hitting her like a wave. Max pressed against her leg. She knelt beside him, running her hands through his fur. "Good boy. We're done now. We're really done." Max licked her hand. The sun rose over Atlanta, painting the skyline in gold and orange. Sarah stood on the banks of the Chattahoochee River, Max beside her, watching the light spread across the water. Behind her, FBI agents were still processing the scene. News helicopters circled overhead. It would be all over the media by noon. But Sarah didn't care. She pulled out her phone and texted Morris. "It's done." His reply came instantly. "You're a damn hero, Collins." Sarah smiled faintly. She typed, "Just doing what was right." Nina approached, 2 coffees in hand. She offered one to Sarah. "Thought you could use this." "Thanks," Sarah said, taking it. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the river. "What now?" Nina asked. Sarah looked down at Max. "Now, we go home. For real this time." Nina nodded. "You've earned it." Sarah took a sip of coffee. "What about Prine, Hall and Odom?" "Federal charges. Conspiracy, trafficking, attempted murder. They're looking at life." Nina paused. "And because of you, we dismantled one of the largest arms trafficking networks in the Southeast. That's a major win." Sarah didn't respond. She just watched the water. "You know," Nina said, "the Bureau could use someone like you. Consulting work. No badge, but plenty of cases." Sarah shook her head. "I'm done, Nina. For real this time." "Fair enough," Nina smiled. "But if you ever change your mind—" "I won't," Nina chuckled. "Stubborn as hell." "Yeah," Sarah said. "I've been told." And Nina finished her coffee and walked back toward the scene. Sarah stayed by the river, Max at her side. The water flowed steadily, carrying everything downstream, the past, the pain, the cases. She looked at Max. "What do you say, partner? Ready to be normal citizens?" Max's tail wagged. Sarah smiled. "Yeah, me too." They turned and walked away from the river, side by side, leaving the chaos behind. For the first time in 10 years, Sarah Collins felt free, and Max, as always, was right there with her. The end.